There's just so much.
You're listening to a Mamma Mia podcast.
Mamma Mia acknowledges the traditional owners of land and waters that this podcast is recorded on.
Hello, it's Jessie here, and I'm dropping into your feed ahead of this week's True Crime Conversations episode because I wanted to introduce you to the wonderful Gemma Barth, who will be taking over the reins of this incredible podcast moving forward. Gemma is the news editor here. You've probably read her writing or heard her on our news podcast, The Quickie, before. Now, this Thursday, Gemma's first episode will be dropping in your feed. She is going through the details of the Michelle Carter case, which is the infamous story of the texting suicide, which inspired the new series The Girl from Plainville, which stars Elle Fanning.
Michelle Carter, 17-year-old girl. Texts her friends for 3 days telling them her boyfriend's missing, but this girl knew he wasn't missing. She was in contact with him the whole time. Right up until he killed himself.
But before I leave you, I just want to say what a privilege it has been hosting this podcast for the last almost 3 years. We launched in June 2019, and we wanted to create a true crime podcast with a female voice and a female perspective. Our mission has always been to humanise victims who are often reduced to a body or a plot point in most true crime stories, which made us very uncomfortable. So by having these conversations with experts, we want to understand more about the factors that create criminals. What true crime does too is it allows us to look at a specific set of tragic circumstances and better understand the world we live in. Who has the power? How does our justice system work? And what can be done to prevent crimes like these in future? I've learned so much from our exceptional guests and have loved the interaction from our listeners, who are always so respectful and curious. Gemma is the perfect host for True Crime Conversations. She asks the right questions, she has an incredible breadth of knowledge, and I promise this podcast is only going to get better and better. So without any further ado, I would like to welcome Gemma Barth, the new host of True Crime Conversations. Hello, Gemma.
Jessie, hello. That was such a lovely, warm welcome to the True Crime family.
Can you give listeners a little introduction? I'm sure they've heard you on The Quickie, or as I said, you've written true crime for the site. You do a lot of interviewing. You do a lot of news coverage. You're an absolute news hound. What are your interests and what are you looking forward to in terms of, coming into the true crime world?
True crime is one of the reasons I started as a journalist in the first place. So I began my career in radio news reporting and news reading. And for anyone that watches or reads the news, they'll know that unfortunately 3/4 of what makes it up is crime, true crime, and often true crime against women. So it was one of the areas that I was, dedicated to. I wanted to be in the courtrooms. I wanted to be at the press conferences, outside the police stations, and that's what I did for the first kind of half of my career. My career at Mamma Mia is just about as old as the podcast. I started 3 years ago here as a senior news writer, and I've since become the news editor here. And I love telling women's stories. That's what I love to do, and it kind of mixes in really well with the true crime world and what you have built here at True Crime Conversations about centering women's stories, highlighting these crimes that are often against them, unfortunately, or the ones that we cover largely. And I'm excited to keep doing that. And excited is probably a strange word to use in the world of crime, but I'm looking forward to holding the space and continuing these conversations.
Absolutely. And that's what I'm really proud of what we do, is that they are conversations and it allows us to ask such important questions of the experts and delve a little bit deeper, I think, and platform the people that have done all the really hard work in terms of speaking to victims' families and compiling information and stories. And, it's a big job, but I could not be prouder that it is it is you taking it over. I know that our listeners will absolutely love you. And of course, they can always email truecrime@mamamia.com.au. If any of you have ideas for cases you'd like us to look at, there's a Facebook group, True Crime Conversations on Facebook, and we're always looking for new cases. So I'm looking forward to this week's episode, Gemma, and to see I'm going to be, the person downloading the episode first thing every week. I cannot wait to be a listener.
Well, on behalf of the listeners, because I am a listener, thank you, Jessie, for an awesome 3 years, and I am excited to take the reins from here.